And of course, they have two overtimes.
Yes.
And maybe should have had the third.
Maybe should have had the third one.
Eddie, it's just so hard to pace on this kind of racetrack, no matter who you are or what kind of team you got with you or anything. I don't think there was ever a pace for the lead.
You know, we hadn't raced with the new car, and they didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
We didn't know what.
But it was a new tire, too.
And it was a new tire. And
there's some racing back from 15th to 25th or something like that.
You know, we're back there a lot. And,
you think we are?
And, you know, we all are.
Here we are at Richard Petty Museum in Level Cross with a little different person sitting at the table here in Level Cross, Eddie Wood of the famed Wood Brothers. How you doing, Eddie?
I'm all right.
We was both in here. Yeah, we was both in Indianapolis yesterday. I can't hardly remember where I was at. But before we get into that, NASCAR last year celebrated 75 years. This year it's 75 years for the Pettys, and next year it'll be 75 years for the Wood Brothers.
Yep.
And you've seen just about all of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 72, and I started full time after I got out of college, actually in 72.
Okay.
I went to races earlier, you know, and you would remember you had to be 15 or 16 to even get in the garage in the early days.
In the early days, you had to be 21. That's when me and Richard Maurice started. And
well, that's true. and so, I would be when I got to be 15, I got my NASCAR license, and during the summertime, I'd go to the races with my dad and uncles, and I was just kind of in the way. And but then they gave me a shirt.
Okay, you was big time then.
I thought I'd arrived then. So,
but you bring that up, and I thought I'd arrived when I finally got a Regal Ride leather jacket with was it blue with yellow sleeves? Or the other way around?
Yes, and the leather part was the sleeves, and it was like a high school football jacket.
Yeah, but I finally got one of them. But and congratulations to coming up on 75 years. That's a long time for anybody. But yesterday we was at Indianapolis, built in 1909.
Yes.
Wonder how many facelifts this place have, because it is modern and it is big.
Yes, it really is. I mean, it's like, you walk in and it just amazes you how big it is. And I've seen pictures, and I've seen actually the garage doors that they used to have were wooden.
Yeah.
And I've seen a couple of them in museums, and from where it started to where it is now, the big pagoda, if I say that right, that's just amazing. And I was fortunate enough to watch part of the race from up there yesterday. And
well, you was up on top big time, and me and Richard was down on the 7th floor, I think, and they invited us up on top, but we were sitting pretty comfortable down there. But can you imagine when that thing was brick?
Yeah, that just blows my mind that it was actually made out of brick. And you get back to the old days, and I would have never seen one. I doubt you did either. A wooden track. There used to be board tracks.
I've heard of that, and there's people getting splinters in them.
Yeah, and I just can't imagine, a board track, but brick. I mean, somebody had to lay those brick.
Yeah, now
and they're big bricks. I'm sure y'all have one here.
Yeah, there's one over.
Yeah,
over
they're bigger than like what my house is built with, and they're laying them on the ground.
Yeah, but getting back to the race, it was. I'm sure there was a lot of engineers and crew chiefs talking about strategy. Everything was, I guess they could base some of it off of Pocono.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because kind of a strategy deal, one for the 12 car. But the stages was even 50-50 and then a 60-lap run. And I don't know, Eddie. It's just so hard to pace on this kind of racetrack, no matter who you are or what kind of team you got with you or anything. I don't think there was ever a pace for the lead.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but it's we hadn't raced with the new car, and they didn't know what to expect.
Yeah,
we didn't know what.
But it was a new tire too.
And it was a new tire and all that. I think there wasn't a lot of passing. The restarts were crazy, which we got taken out on a restart, and one of your cars, the 42, did also.
Yeah, and one of the better showing he's had all year.
Yeah, he ran really well, and we were running really well. We started and got around 15th and stayed there through the first stage and through the pit stops. But I think the thing that overshadowed maybe the lack of passing was the strategy that was going on. Like there at the end I kept waiting for Brad to run out of fuel. Like how can that be?
Yeah.
And obviously he did run out, but I wasn't even sure Blaney could make it. He was 10 laps better than Brad. And
of course they have two overtimes.
Yes.
And maybe should have had the third.
Maybe should have had the third one.
And that would have changed some more stuff, even if the fuel mileage and then the restart, because the restart, but it's a typical NASCAR race. They're pretty calm for the first two stages. Then when that third stage starts, they get desperate.
Yeah.
And they start touching each other and rooting and gouging. But I wish they could pace better with these cars. I don't know. I'm not throwing off on them, but I guess I am too. But they just. But there's some racing back from 15th to 25th or something like that.
We're back there a lot. And,
you think we are?
And we all are. And and this sounds kind of odd, but I think they race harder from 25th back to the end, or even 20th.
Yeah, that's where the most of the racing is.
It's a dogfight back there, and it's almost like the further or closer you are to the front, the more respect everybody gives each other until the last couple of laps. Yeah. But it's tough back there.
But, it's the same old thing. They've had a race and they've had a winner, and it's in the record book, and we can talk about it all we want to. But and we got the longest layoff coming up from now to Richmond that we've had in. I can't remember. I can't even remember this long a layoff.
Yeah, I guess the last time they had the Olympics, it was probably a 2-week layoff. I don't remember, but I remember it was a break.
Yeah. Okay.
It's almost like it's at the end of the season, and I heard somebody on the radio coming down here talking about. I think it might have been the NASCAR radio talking about next week, calling it Christmas or tomorrow, whenever the 24th is.
Well, I don't know
Christmas in July.
I don't know where you remember this, but back in the 60s, if we finished the season November the 7th or something like that, we started the new season the next week. And we'd have 5 or 6 or 3 or 4 races in the previous year before the next year. I hope I hadn't confused you on that.
But I've read that in those Greg Felding books. I don't remember that happening.
I do.
but I remember, I know my dad and them went because it was a race in Augusta, Georgia, as a road course, and I think it was in November. They ran there a couple of times, like in maybe in 65 or 66.
Was it 64?
It could have been 64.
Okay, I don't know, but they never did. Golly, that was one of them tracks too that was a miracle nobody got hurt on that thing, because it never was finished good. And
I never was there, but I know they did run like 2 or 3 races in November prior to the Daytona 500, but they were considered the same year as the Daytona 500.
And I'm repeating myself again, but they did have a race in the famed track at Indianapolis. They had a winner. It'll be in the record books. And before long, we'll be talking about a different race, and this one will be somewhat forgotten.
Yeah, this will be forgotten. Well, now we got the break, so it's the last race. That's what everybody talks about until the week of the next one, which will be Richmond.
Yeah, and it's a Sunday night.
Yeah, it's going to be a late night, too.
And it's hard on old people like me. Of course, you're not very old, but you look
Yeah.
old.
Yeah, I am old.
I'm sure a lot of the boys are looking for a break, but the bad part about it, you always like to run good just for a break, so you're not so negative about what happened in the last race, and it didn't happen to neither one of us. The 43 had fuel pump problem from the get-go, and of course the 42 ran decent and got in a wreck, and of course the 21 got in a wreck. Jimmy got in a wreck, so it would have been a lot better if we'd had some better finishes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you always want to have a good finish before break, because we used to have weekends off, like one weekend, and you'd always want to go into the the next weekend with a positive outlook. But in our case, we ran pretty well. We got in a crash. If you really run poorly, that hurts you worse than a crash. And like the 42 was fast yesterday. The 43 had a problem, and Jimmy was pretty fast, and he got in a wreck. So you can look at that as fairly positive and feel good about it. But if you're a racing person, you kind of can talk yourself into most anything.
And maybe you'd like to run next week and not have 2 or 3 weeks off. Okay.
That's true, too.
Oh, boy.
Go ahead.
I think there's a little bit inconsistency on their normal calls.
I listened to Elton Sawyer. He had a clip explaining their side of it, about the 41 was still moving like he was trying to get going, and by the time he actually stopped, they had already crashed, already passed the start-finish line, so they threw the yellow. Sometimes when somebody gets, like we were talking this morning, somebody gets sideways, instant caution, and sometimes they don't. And I don't know how that. I've never been in a tower in recent years, during a race, so I don't know if it's one person pushing a button to call it a yellow, or whether it's a committee, or 3 people or whatever. So I wouldn't want to be the guy that called a race. I promise you, I wouldn't want to be that. It's hard enough on our side of it, isn't it?
Yeah. For us, it happened in 1978. We had Chrysler, and they came with we still had the same suspension, but the body was so bad, and people had quit making stuff for Chrysler because there wasn't that many engine pieces for Chrysler, because there wasn't that many race cars. So we had to switch to General Motors, and it was a big deal, because we had a lot of experience with them torsion bars and leaf springs. And if in the mid-70s, if we'd have run Indy with it would have been a good car there.
Yeah, that one right there. They ran that car for a number of years.
Yeah.
It was really fast. But on the Ford side, in the mid-60s, and this is before my time. I was around, but I wasn't really a part of it. But they had the coil springs, all the way around with the trailing arm type deal. And then in the late 60s, like 67, they went to a smaller car, which is the Fairlane. And it was kind of a unibody car, but it had leafs. So we ran leafs, up until the end of 73 season, and then our car run out as like y'all's Dodge did. We couldn't run it anymore. But at that time, we had to switch over to the the truck arms with the coil springs. And for what I remember of my dad and uncle and them, it was just like Dale and them, you just did it. That's what you had to do, and you didn't think nothing about it. You didn't complain about it or worry about it, because it was kind of the same for everybody.